guys, it's Karalynn, and welcome back to the podcast. As you know, it's a podcast called Quit Getting Screwed Podcast, and it is named so because that was the name of my first book. My first book was a project to commercial subcontractors or contractors who work on commercial projects that signed subcontracts with general contractors. And so I wrote the book because a client of mine lost his business in a legal battle, not because he did bad work, but because he didn't sign the contract, that he didn't understand the contract that he signed and the things that would be held against him. And so I think, representing small to mid-sized family-owned construction businesses, I really think, so as a lawyer, if you've ever read a commercial construction subcontract, you'd rather burn it than try to fix it because that's how messed up it is. And I think what happened, this is my educated guess on how the contracts got so one-sided, is that the subcontractors that did the work wanted to go to work and they trusted the general contractors or the people that were going to hire them. And the general contractors obviously had lawyers draft their documents. The subcontractors didn't bother to read them. And so over the course of years, with the lack of negotiation on these contracts, they've become very one-sided in the general contractor's favor. And so my job as a lawyer is to, number one, tell you what the risks are. And number two, I can give you some ideas on how to negotiate. I want you to know what the risks are so you understand what you're signing. I'm not saying you have to negotiate everything, but I want you to walk into signing a commercial subcontract, understanding that if things go wrong, here's what can happen. And so that's what Quit Getting Screwed, the book, is about. So I'm going to kind of go through and do a summary of some of the most influential chapters that I think commercial subcontractors need to know about, right? And so this is a mashup of chapter 1 and chapter 4. So chapter 1 in the book talks about your bid, right? There's some things to understand. You get about a bid. So you get your project documents, you get the plans for your scope of work, you review all of that, and you issue a bid. Now, two things I like to say here is, first, do an itemized bid, not a turnkey bid. And here's why. It's happened to some clients in the past. Is like, if you list out all of the items that you're going to do and the price, that is your offer. This is the work that you're going to do. If you do a turnkey bid, like, hey, I'm going to do all of this AC work for $100,000, and you miss something, now you're on the hook to do whatever work you missed if they accept your bid. And I've seen it happen. Obviously, you're going to be the lowest bid because you missed something. They're going to send you that contract and you sign it. Now you're on the hook to do that work that you missed. So always do an itemized bid, send it over. That way, if it gets accepted, they're accepting the work that you offered to do for the price that you offered to do, right? So you send your bid over, itemized bid. Your bid is an offer, right? They review it. The general contractor reviews it, your bid against other bids. And then if your bid is accepted, they're going to send you a subcontract. So here's another very important thing to remember in commercial subcontracting is that the subcontract comes over with a scope of work. Usually the bid does not become part of the contract. So what happens? You send over your itemized bid. They send over a subcontract with a scope of work. That subcontract and scope of work is a counter offer. So the first thing you need to do is to go look at that scope of work to make sure it matches your bid. Because a lot of the times it won't. A lot of the times there'll be extra work in there. Things that are outside of your bid that would increase your price. And subcontractors have a habit of not reviewing the scope of work and just assuming it's the same as the bid and just signing it. And then when it comes down to they're in the project, the general contractor is asking them to do this work and they're like, hey, I didn't bid this work. No, you didn't bid it. But once you signed that contract, it was in your scope of work, and now you're on the hook to do it. So I say that to say your bid goes out, the contract that comes back is a counteroffer. Generally, the bid does not become part of the contract documents between you and the general contractor. So once the subcontract comes back, even if you don't review any of the other provisions of the subcontract, review the scope of work, right? Make sure it matches your bid. Review if there's any updated plans. Make sure you review those to make sure nothing's added. If there's a new project manual, make sure you review that to make sure things haven't been added. I've seen all of those documents used to expand a scope of work successfully. So make sure you've reviewed all of those things. If the scope of work is different than your bid, do not sign the contract, right? Especially don't sign the contract if they say, oh, we'll do a change order later. The contract that you sign is the one that will be used to interpret what you're on the hook to do, what you're legally entitled to, what you're legally not entitled to. If your scope of work is larger than your bid, you have to send an email back to the general contractor, the project manager, saying, hey, this is not what I agreed to do. There's this extra work in here that was larger than my bid, and here's the increased price. Please issue a new subcontract, right? That way you're protected. You'll get paid for the extra work. If you just sign the contract as it is, you're not going to be entitled to that extra work. I've seen it happen tons of times. Oh, we'll fix it later with a change order, which never happens. So make sure the contract that you sign, you're getting paid for everything in the scope of work. You know exactly what you're doing, right? So that's probably one of the biggest. So this book, Quit Getting Screwed, is available on Amazon. There's examples of clients that got burned by not reading the scope of work that was different than their bid. It happens all the time, especially if you're newer to working with bigger GCs. So first bit of advice, do your bid as an itemized bid. If it's accepted, the first thing you do is review your scope of work to make sure it matches the bid. If it doesn't, send an email back to the general contractor requesting the increase of price to cover all of the additional work. If you guys have any other questions, you can pick up the book on Amazon, or you can give me a call at the office, reach out at thecromienslawfirm.com. Thanks.